Hi friends, today I'm going to cover AWS real-time interview questions. I have already recorded few videos. If you have not gone through that, please browse to my channel and scroll down to the AWS real-time interview questions here. You can go through this, and as well as you can also check AWS real-time scenarios related video. So let us get into our topic. So first question, what are the key parameters or areas for a good cloud architecture? So these are the 5 different parameters or areas which you need to consider, irrelevant of what migration strategy or what adaptation methodology you are going to use for your requirement. Whatever it is, you have to consider operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. These are the 5 key areas which you need to consider for any good cloud architecture. So operational excellence, like how this particular solution is going to be operated in future when it is deployed or when it is implemented. The security is one of the prime area which you need to focus. As you are taking it to the public cloud, you should all consider the various security parameters as part of your architecture. The reliability, like how long, like high availability, disaster recovery, failovers, all those things comes under the reliability. Performance efficiency, so you should provide the efficient solutions which gives you the best performance out of the cloud, whether it is Azure or AWS. Cost optimization, as you know, there are different type of pay modes and different options available, so you should always concentrate on the optimizing the consumption of your cloud based on your needs and requirements. Probably there are different solutions again and the different standards to optimize the cost, whether you want to go with the PaaS or IaaS or SaaS based solutions. Within that also, what are the things you need to enable and how long you need to enable or disable. Maybe you want to enable things during the morning times, or and during the night times you want to shut down those things to save the cost. So there are plenty of strategies which you can adapt to optimize the cost. Anyway, at a nutshell, these are the 5 different areas you can consider for good cloud architecture. So the next question is, can you explain the PaaS based architecture for simple web application with web services and database? Majority of the application requirement from the small sized or mid-sized companies is this. So any application team have the requirement of holding the microservices, backend as a database, and front end as a web application. So in case if you want to reduce the maintenance on the customer side, then you can suggest PaaS based architecture or serverless based architecture. So the interviewer wants to check how much knowledge you have on the PaaS based features. Anyway, you already know about IaaS and stuff, but they also want to test you how much you are using or you have used PaaS based. So let us just check. Elastic Beanstalk is one of the PaaS based or serverless architecture, like where you can host your web applications with different type of technology stacks, whether it is a LAMP or main or .NET stack or Java stack that you can select, and then you can host your web application on top of the Elastic Beanstalk. Based on the type of load, you can select number of instances or type of instances underlying architecture, and then to deploy your images or media type resources, you can select the S3. At the same time, you can also enable S3 for taking the backups, RDS to host your database. RDS has plenty of different options. It is a managed service. You don't need to worry about again high availability, disaster recovery and stuff. They have underlying features which you need to enable to get those stuff. Coming to the cloud front, in case if you want to enable the CDN, content delivery network, then you can use the cloud front. Web application firewall to protect your web application from the various threats such as WASP rules or different type of pre-managed rules also available as part of the web application firewall. You can also use Route 53 to configure your domain. And then coming to the API gateway and Lambda, these are to enable the API services. In case if you have written any web services, then you can make use of API gateway and Lambda, and that can be consumed by either from your web application or from your mobile application, or even if you have different type of applications such as desktop applications or some kind of Windows services. At a nutshell, you will suggest Elastic Beanstalk for your web application launching, RDS for the database hosting, and for the web services you can suggest API Gateway Lambda. Additionally, for the security, WAF, and CloudFront for the content delivery network in case if the requirement demands for the multi-regional web application access. Then Route 53 for your domain configuration. So internally it will translate into the IP and stuff. So moving on to the next question, can you explain more about web application firewall? So the interview can correlate to the previous architecture and can bring more questions on the architecture side. So where all you can enable web application firewall. So web application firewall is basically to protect your web applications from the various web exploits. It also has a predefined core rule sets from the OWASP guidelines. So OWASP guidelines usually publish core rule sets, or like they have different versions, 3.0, 3.1. All those things are already available as predefined rule set, top 10 OWASP guidelines. So you can by default enable through the web application firewall. You can also adapt few rules from the AWS predefined or pre-managed rule sets. What if those rules what you are looking for is not available as part of this both? Then you can write your custom rules as part of the web application firewalls. This web application firewall can be enabled as part of the CloudFront, or you can also enable it as part of the load balancer or API gateway. There are three different stages where you can enable web application firewall, so that whatever the traffic it is coming into the web application, first it touches to the web application firewall and make sure that it doesn't have any threads, and it also checks the various conditions and the rules you have written. If everything passes, it will filter and sends that traffic to your web application. So there are different type of rules, like you can block the IPs, you can also block certain payloads which is coming to your website, and you can also monitor those things if there are any exploits or threats found to your website. So moving on to the next one, how do you trace the issues web application from the web application firewall, and how does it function? So if you see, there are different type of things, like where you can enable IP sets which you want to block. You can also enable the rules group. You can also write your regex sets, like some kind of regex expressions you can enable, so that your web application will be protected, defended, or detected or prevented. So for example, if it finds something fishy, then that can be logged into the Kinesis, or it can, the metrics can be logged to the CloudWatch. So now if you see the question, how does it function or how do you trace? So these are the two ways that you can trace. Based on the logging and metrics, you can see and find out what are the threats or potential threats, and then you can protect your application based on these logs. As I mentioned earlier, this can be enabled on API gateway, CloudFront, and load balancer. So all the request goes through the web application firewall, and those will be filtered and redirected to the respective applications where you have enabled. So moving on to the next one, how do you protect your web application from the DDoS attacks? DDoS attack is a distributed denial of attack. So if any attacker wants to bring your application down, they will be sending repetitive requests to your web application. For example, maybe thousands of requests each second or each minute will bring your application down because of the heavy traffic coming and unnecessary requests coming to your application. Then how do you protect your application from such kind of attacks? So AWS Shield standard you can configure behind the CloudFront and Route 53 to get protected from the DDoS attacks. So it protects your resources from common frequently occurring network and transport layer DDoS attacks. Attack traffic can be geographically isolated and observed using the capacity in edge locations close to the source. Additionally, you can configure geographical restrictions to help block attacks originating from specific countries. So if you are taking a big architecture like you have enabled such as edge locations and stuff, at the edge location itself you can block these DDoS attacks so that you are not flooded with the heavy traffic to your main server. So you can see the architecture. So AWS Shield can be enabled at the Route 53. It can be enabled at the CloudFront distribution. At the same time, it can be enabled at the security groups as well in the VPC. So moving on to the next one. What is Guard Duty? Guard Duty is another security feature to protect your workloads, VPCs, EC2 instances. So in terms of a definition, it is a threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious activity and unauthorized behavior to protect your AWS accounts and workloads. The service uses machine learning anomaly detection and integrated threat intelligence to identify and prioritize potential threats. Guard Duty analyzes tens of billions of events across multiple AWS data sources such as AWS CloudTrail, Amazon VPC flow logs and DNS logs. So if you enable this on the various workloads such as VPC or EC2 or maybe some different features, then it will continuously monitor those and make sure that your application is protected from the malicious activities. So in the picture you can see Amazon Guard Duty is enabled, and it is a threat detection service that continuously monitors, and if it is enabled it will log to the cloud trail logs, VPC flow logs and DNS logs if it finds any potential threats by using its own machine learning algorithms. It will continuously analyze and intelligently detect the threats and take the necessary action as you defined or as it got a predefined rule set. Moving on to the next question. What are the AWS security best practices? There are plenty of best practices. I just listed down few of them. I can say hundreds of best practices because there are different features in each and every area. You can again enable or can say 10 or 20 best practices to be used. So at a nutshell, first understand what's your responsibility and what's cloud vendor's responsibility. So in case if you're taking the services in few areas, cloud will provide their own security tools or security management, but in few areas you need to take over. So those gray areas has to be identified and you need to protect your own services. Create a strong passwords for your AWS resources. Enable multi-factor authentication. That is always good to secure your user IDs and passwords like IAMs. Set up AWS IAM users groups and roles for daily account access. Instead of giving the access for forever, based on the need. For example, if the particular developer or a user wants to use it for 2-3 days, just only give that limited access rather than giving monthly or yearly access. Delete your account's access keys. Enable CloudTrail in all AWS regions. Log each activity and event with detailed information so that you can have a good track who has done. If anybody compromised, then easily you can find who has done that particular thing. Enable policies by using AWS organizations and AWS configs. Enable inspector, which is an automated security assessment service. Encrypt highly sensitive data such as protected health information PHI or personally identifiable information PII. Using customer control keys. Check for the compliances. These are the few best practices. As I mentioned earlier, there are plenty of best practices for the security. So moving on to the next question. This is again related to the previous question. just to show you what are the gray areas or which you need to cover up. These are the things you need to cover up, and these are the things which are provided by the cloud provider for the in terms of the security. So compute storage, database, networking, responsible for security of the cloud. But if you are enabling and if you are giving the access, then you will be responsible for encrypting your own data which is being stored in the blocks or in your computes. At the same time, access controls, policies controls, compliance control, all those things need to be taken care by you. So this is just a high level picture which need to be taken care by yourself. So what are the basic security features on AWS? This is also one thing, you know, they may be twisting in the different ways. What are the basic security features, or what are the security features at least you have used? So these are the basic features which anybody uses as part of the security. IAM, identity access management, like you will give authentication, like you will give the, you will define the various users and what are the authorization they can get it on the cloud infrastructure, and this is a minimum thing which anybody follow. KMS, control your data, key management service, like to store your keys in the encrypted format, and you will use those keys to encrypt your data which is lying under storages, like or under your EC2 or your disk, all those things. So Amazon VPC, control your network. So if you're defining any EC2 instances, you don't want to keep it with public IPs, all your EC2 instances, right? So you have to keep it under the private cloud. So that is the VPC, virtual private computing. So you can keep all your EC2 instances under the VPC so that they are not exposed to the public. But you can open one gateway to access those systems. Only through that gateway any of those VPC EC2 instances will be accessed, so that it will be completely under the private cloud. Again, there are different concepts. You can keep it backend subnets and front-end subnets. Front-end subnets can be exposed through the local through the gateway, but the backend subnets can be completely accessible only from the internal VPC resources. So it's a big topic again. You can go through that. These are the basic things which you will be using as part of the security. So moving on to the next one, what are the types of gateways? There are different type of gateways which you usually use for various purposes. Virtual private gateway and customer gateway. So in case if you are using site-to-site VPN, then virtual private gateway will be used on the cloud side, and customer gateway will be used under the customer on-premises data center, so that they can interact. So these gateways need to be enabled and configured. Again, you have various things, like you can enable the security certificate based or the different type of handshaking. So you will use VPC and customer gateway to connect from the site to site. Then transit gateway, like say if you have plenty of VPCs and then you want to make it as a hub by maybe like hundreds of VPCs, and you want to make hub and then you want to access through that, then you can use a transit gateway. So by using transit gateway, all these VPCs can interact each other. And NAT gateways, internet gateways, storage gateways, tape gateway, file gateway are for different purposes. Like if you want to enable your on-premises data backup to the storage, then you can use the storage gateway. In case if you have tape disk and you want to enable the backup strategy to your AWS cloud, then you can use a tape gateway. Similarly, file gateway, in case if you want to do a file sync between your on-premises to the cloud, then you can use a file gateway. So internet gateway, the name itself, it says that if you want to provide a internet to your VPC, then you can use a internet gateway. So just to show you in the form of the pictures, so you can see NAT gateway is here, and then you can see VZW, and then you can also see transit gateway here. If you have multiple VPCs, then it will work as a hub. By using transit gateway, they can interact with each other. Then you can see internet gateway. If you want to access the various resources from the public domain, it could be the managed services, or even if you want to access from the public network, then you'll use the internet gateway. So these are the various gateways. It will really help you for your interview, just to have the picture, and then you can easily understand what will be used when. So coming to the next one, site-to-site VPN. As I mentioned earlier, in case if you're communicating from your VPC to your on-premises site-to-site connection, then you can use virtual private gateway and customer gateway. So for the handshake, as I mentioned, you have pre-shared key here, and through the IPsec tunnel you can establish the connection between your VPC and on-premises servers. There are different ways to connect from your on-premises data center to the VPC, like site to site, point to site, and express gateway kind of stuff. So you can explore more on that. Thanks for watching my videos. That's it for today, but I'll come up with more interview questions, real-time interview questions. Please subscribe to my channel and share it to your friends as well. In case if you have questions from your real-time interviews, please write it in the comments or mail it to me. That will really be helpful for other guys who are attending the interviews. Thanks once again for watching my videos.